Welcome to today's edition of Joyous Live. It's always wonderful to be here to discuss national issues. And today we'll be talking about the planned protest by young Nigerians. All of them are asking for one thing, asking for better welfare. The purchasing power of Nigerians is low. However, with all this protest talk, we've had stakeholders from several facets of the society beg for patience, asking the young people to shelve their protests. If you look at the whole trajectory of protests, look at Uganda, look at Kenya, to what end does this usual national protest bring about? What are the implications economically? We'll be discussing all of that and even analyzing some of the demands these young people are asking. Is it even achievable? Well, that's what we'll be discussing. We'll go for a short break. When we return quickly, I would introduce our guests who will be doing justice to this, and the conversation will begin. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
While wrapping up the day, unwind with the reminiscence of the day's news from home and abroad with Kaftan TV 7 p.m. News.
Good to have you join us on Kaftan News at 7.
Nigerians are living in up to 5%. Our young people, we purpose the Harmony Symphony.
It's good to have you join us on Kaftan TV News at 7.
What we found that the 10 naira tax is not actually sufficient.
National, foreign news headlines. Get balanced, accurate facts on the latest news in business, politics, entertainment, sports, and more. Live from our studios.
Many thanks for watching and join us again at 9
Kaftan
p.m.
TV News.
Yes, there is news on your device, but hearing an analyst's perspective is the icing on the cake that Daily Break Africa provides. Break. I mean...
Welcome back. My guest in the studio is Dr. Soji Adeniyi. He's a social development and climate advocate. He has worked with several international and national organizations like the United Nations Program Operations Specialist. He's an expert and board member and former chair of the United Nations Pension Fund. The list goes on and on, but so that we do not expand all the time talking about who he is, let's just get to the conversation. Doctor, it's always nice to have you in the conversation. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Joy, for having me.
Yes, it's always wonderful.
Thank you.
Young people want to go on a protest, and we've been reading and seeing what's going on around the world. I mean, the economic challenges we're facing is somewhat global, but Nigerians have never had it this bad. What your thoughts when you saw that there was this call for protest? What were your first thoughts?
Well, thank you very much. I think that we are in for quite a difficult moment as a nation, and I sincerely hope that in the midst of the stressful moments that we're having, yes, the young people may be confused as to what's going on, and of course they're seeing what is happening around the world. So the days of social media is such that you could see that there is a global challenge in terms of the economy. The US, the UK, everyone. You just saw the elections in the UK and how it went on the basis of the economy of the United Kingdom. If they could go through that, and then there's a clean sweep because elections needed to happen, so the new things could be anticipated and put on the table. You saw that Labour, was emphatic on the fact that they were going to soft pedal on certain policies. They were going to change certain things along the economy in order to transform the UK economy and all of that, including the almighty deal with the African countries,
right.
and dropping that deal in order to get more support within the country. So the global space is going through challenges at this time, and definitely as a nation we are not isolated in any way. However, looking at our peculiar situation, we just have a new government that took over the realm of affairs barely one year ago.
Right.
And they made a lot of promises, and of course people who voted them into power expected certain changes. Incidentally, they came in on that mantra that it was
going to be rosy.
going to be rosy.
Isn't that the politician's way?
Yes. I mean, the normal way they would tell you they would fix everything until you give them the opportunity, and then they'll start giving you excuses. As far as I'm concerned, I think there's a lot that's ought to have been done that probably have not yet been done. They told us to please be patient. They are working on a lot of things. But if you look at the amount of work that has been done in the last 1 year, very few ministries could be pointed at. I don't want to say ministers, because ministry is, encompassing of both the minister and the people in those ministries expected to deliver results and what we call dividends of democracy. So we're not seeing that, and people have the right to voice it out, to say, come on guys, this is not what we bargained for. So I see, a genuine voice to say we are not getting a fair share of the deal in terms of dividend of democracy. So the young people have a point in voicing their displeasure. However, we need to look back at history and see where has protest taken us in the past.
Right.
I started my activism, during the SAP protests, 1985. President Babangida was in office, and I do recall that we walked all the way from our campus to Dodam Barrack, carrying all kinds of placards insisting that Nigeria must not sign up to SAP and the rest of them. And it was my first encounter with, power, and I was representing my school, and we were eventually made to have a one-on-one conversation with the then head of state. And we were shocked the way he broke down the reasons why we needed to sign up this or not sign this or engage with this. And he did make some promises, including at that time reducing school fees and hiring, more teachers and all of that. So we saw that he genuinely had plans that were going to affect us as young people. So the protest began to take a new shape. Those of us who listened to him or who had that opportunity of engaging became advocates, for the system. We went back and we were thought to have been bought over, but sincerely nobody gave us anything. We were just convinced by the amount of data and information and the level of engagement that we had with the head of state. I mean, you would think that he's just an head of state that would speak politically, but he was reeling out all the data for us and telling us that if we allowed this will stabilize over a 6-month period, this will stabilize over a 9-month period, this will yield positive results at this point. And then he gave us all the reasons why we as young people need to have a commitment to the country rather than be politically motivated because the opposition is saying let's do this, let's do that. No matter, but it was easier as a military government because at that time he had he calls the shots. He just needs to tell the Supreme Military Council, and they don't need to go to any parliament or go through any kind of discussions that would lead to the kind of things that we're seeing now. So I think, piggyback that to other protests that have come over the years. I mean, some due to June 12 challenge. Then, beyond that, we started coming up with other protests including the most recent NSAS.
Right.
And when you look at the protest, you realize that despite the fact that people have very good reasons to protest, the risk is also that there are also people out there who have been waiting for an opportunity
to hijack
the process and then,
cause mayhem. But before we get that far, before we get into those hypothetical situations, if hypothetically too, if the president is to call leaders of this, do you think with the distrusts that we already find, we will believe promises at this moment?
One of the challenges that we have now is that even for this protest coming up, we haven't been able to identify leaders that are leading it because of the social media space. Everybody on Twitter, on X, on Instagram, everybody's a leader, and they're saying, I'm leading my local government, I'm leading my community, I'm leading my street. So basically there's nobody to invite to the table. So I would have thought that the president will begin to talk to maybe students leaders, maybe community leaders, which I believe are still possible between the few days that we have left to the proposed date. I mean, August 1st is still some 5-6 days away, and hoping agenda in a town hall setting could perhaps begin to give reasons why, we had delays. I also would have thought that maybe the president will go a little extra by demonstrating that, okay, I'm now ready for business. So this person has not performed, so I'm relieving them. This one and is coming in to take over. So just give him 6 months. You buy time with that.
Exactly, but it seems to be the APC way. The past administration also did the same thing. Whoever you are, however you're doing it, you just keep going. In fact, there were some ministers who served 2 terms.
Yes.
In spite of what was going on in those ministries.
Incidentally, that happened to be the truth, and Nigeria is way more blessed than the kind of things that we're seeing. We're seeing some people that are just not the best fit for the roles that they are playing. I don't want to name names here. But the bottom line is that we need, as a nation, to begin to look at what do we need to do as a government, if we could say that, to make people have the hope again. The renewed hope agenda is supposed to be anchored on certain deliverables. And when those deliverables are not coming fast enough, I mean, when you see people saying that, we were given palliatives, but the palliatives are not consumable, and it's insufficient. We're promised that this would happen, that will happen, and it's not happening. That in itself, increases the level of agitation that we're seeing now.
Now let's talk about these palliatives. I mean, we have always, some of us have been really crying out. It is not a sustainable way of, like they say, we're trying to bring you out of poverty, and then you give palliatives, you give us rice, you give us beans, you give us, we will eat it and want more, and that's exactly what's going on now. Do you think, because I know when this was rife, when this conversation for a protest was still very little voices here and there, 20 trucks of rice was sent to every state, and we're not daft. Nigerians aren't daft, so they are watching to say rice again. Excuse me.
I don't know who advised them to think that would probably be an indication of understanding that there's hunger in the land. I mean, if we say there's hunger in the land, you have to teach people to fish rather than give them fish. They'll finish the fish and they'll be hungry again.
It's food.
So definitely you expect the kind of lashbacks that we're getting now, which does not mean that any thinking through has gone through the process of the palliative in itself, even if there was some videos flying the rounds that 300 people were meant to share like 3 kg of rice. I mean, how does that get anyone anywhere?
But think about it, 20 trucks,
cup?
about
20 trucks it's crazy.
How many bags would that have for a
even
state?
if you give 200 trucks in a state, how many kg, how many people are there? How many bags is a truck of rice? Yeah, I mean, it's just not going to serve the purpose. But imagine if we did something that was going to impact on the transportation in the local government.
Exactly.
And then people who used to spend like 100 naira or 200 naira or 500 naira to go to work suddenly finds out that they can spend 50 naira, 100 naira, 200 naira. That reduces their cost per month. So if they were spending 15,000 naira on transportation per month, that shrinks to 5,000. 10,000 becomes available to be spent to buy whatever they want to buy, even if the prices, you know,
and
the prices will, of
in the
course,
long run, they will probably buy
the prices will respond.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, because once the transportation start going down, cost of moving those goods from the farm to the market comes down, and then we can face the market people and say, hey, what's your excuse? And then, of course, we talk about the issue of security. If people can't go to their farms because bandits have taken over and they are paying. Now, bandits are not saying don't farm, but bandits are now taking taxes for that.
Structured taxes.
Yeah, so when that happens, what it means is that all of us are paying the tax. We're paying, you know, retroactively through
because it will be captured in what they sell to you.
Absolutely. So if a basket of tomato in Sokoto came out at, you know, 10,000 naira per basket, by the time it gets to Abuja, it's already like 20,000. By the time it gets to Lagos, it's probably going to be like 40 or 50,000 because the roads are bad. There are no trains to move them to Lagos, and therefore, you know, naturally, you expect that the market women will react to whatever it is that they buy. They want to make twice the profit. So that is the environment that we found ourselves. We need to think back and say, what are we going to do that will make the farmers safe to be able to produce, not just produce in the manner they've been producing before, mechanized, improved seedlings, all kinds of things that can improve the food output, and then cheap transportation to market, storage facilities, and all of those. So if somebody who is Minister of Agric or Food Security is saying what I am saying now and saying that check us out in the next 6 months, this group are going to be producing this number of tons from this local government, and these ones will happen from here, people would have the hope, and they will say, okay, how do we engage?
Exactly.
And then we start having that kind of conversation of, you know, saying that, okay, you know, 6 months down the line, you know, this is what we're going to have. Exactly, but we're not seeing any of that. Whatever it is that they're doing, you know, under their desk, and nobody is speaking to us.
Right. I mean, you as an experienced social development expert, I know you used to be very close to the corridors of power. So if anything, I want to blame you. What's going on? I mean, you have a better...
let's not go there.
Blueprint as to how we can...
let's not go there. We had a good blueprint. You know all the things we said during that period, and they're still there as blueprints, but people are not, you know, rising up to make those things happen. For instance, you talk about saying that this is the end to petrol subsidy, but the plan was that we were going to have CNG powered vehicles. We were going to have conversion of petrol dependent vehicles to CNG, and we're going to have everybody using I Pass My Neighbor and the rest of them convert to LNG.
Yes, we don't need
so PMS consumption will go so low that even if one of our refineries were to work, it will serve our local needs. But that didn't happen. That is yet to happen. Let me not say it didn't happen. It's yet to happen. We saw the presidential initiative, great ideas. Okay, this is how we want to do it. But we're still not producing the kits, the conversion kits, how to be produced locally in Nigeria. Right. And then we train our young people to be able to do the conversions right there in their local government. Somebody doesn't need to come into Abuja or into Lagos or into Port Harcourt because they want to do a conversion. 774 local governments can each have one conversion facility, and we could be producing in each of the 6 geopolitical zones.
Beyond the conversion plants, I was even hoping that, because I know there's a long list, there's only one in Abuja, in the FCT.
Now we have about 6.
Is it functioning?
Yes.
Because that's even good. Now, let's say hypothetically, I have converted my people.
But the question you want to ask yourself is, how did they get the CNG? They are still trucking from Ajaokuta into Abuja. So any logistics challenge, somebody blocks the road in Lokoja, you know, we will still...
And we don't have enough points, do we?
Well, the points are getting better. NNPC just launched about 4, you know, about 2 weeks ago. I haven't seen any vehicle there. I hope it's not just that they launched them and then they locked them up just to meet the expectation of Mr. President. But if indeed those facilities are working and they are able to serve, then it means that we have like 5 points in Abuja. But 5 points is very small for a city the size of Abuja. Or by now, we should be seeing that all our Uber cars and Bolts and all of them are all CNG converted. And how can we make this happen? Just give them financing option. Bring in the private sector, bring in the people who are going to do the conversion, have an understanding that each of these car owners do not need to cover out about #1 million to do
Just
the
to
conversion,
convert,
but
right.
the finance person comes and puts the finance down, the technical people come, and the people who are going to join, in ensuring that this energy transition happens also have a network. So that way you can be sure that more than 70% to 80% of the cars that are running in the city will even be running cleaner. Yesterday I was seeing that Abuja air quality had dropped to 4. We used to be 2, several months back. So I'm wondering, if we're converting to, cleaner energy, why are we dropping air quality? It simply means that, we're not moving in the direction that we ought to move.
It's unfortunate.
Very
And,
unfortunate.
you just mentioned the fact that it doesn't seem like a coordinated protest. This would have been an opportunity to actually hit your demand
Absolutely.
home. So what would you suggest for
It's
the government at the moment? Because like you said, it's difficult. I was about to get somebody who is supposed to speak for those protesting. It was difficult. Nobody
wants to also show up as leading the protest,
right,
for a good reason. They don't want the security agencies to be all over them and all of that.
Are we
and
still, should we still be
and
there?
I've told myself and a couple of others to say the security agencies themselves need to come out and say, hey guys, we're not after you, we just want to protect you. We want to make sure that people don't hijack what you want to do. We want to make sure that you can speak your voice with anybody without, so that the government and the people that need to hear you can hear you. I mean, it's like what we saw in Nairobi, in Kenya, in Uganda. These were most often not ending in the way that they are planned, because some of these businesses that are sometimes affected are not government owned, and even if they are government owned, it would still cost us taxpayers money to fix them.
Right.
So it means that we'll go back to where we used to be several years after the protest, because we'll keep fixing what has been destroyed. Businesses would lose, whatever it is that they have garnered to be able to contribute to the economy and pay taxes to the government, because even people who are working in those businesses, I mean, so what happened in Lagos, the ShopRite in
several businesses
are still not
affected,
back,
right.
functional to the capacity they were, in 2020. So you can imagine when 2024,
4 years, about 4 years ago.
Some of them have left Nigeria after that experience, because they just couldn't recover, because it's not something that the insurance will happily pay you, because it's not covered. So the challenge is that we need to encourage the young people to engage with government in whatever form that they want to engage. It's better,
in spite of this distrust,
yes,
hovering over
that. Yes, call in and have a conversation with the Minister of Youth. Is supposed to be representing you. Have a conversation with all the young ministers in the cabinet. We have the largest number of young ministers in this cabinet in a long time.
We have a lot of ministers.
Exactly, that are young people. So let them call a town hall meeting. Let them have conversation and say, this is what I'm doing. This is what I will do. I will speak my mind to the president on your behalf as, a young, people. So when people compare us with Nairobi, Kenya, I tell them it's a completely different ballgame.
It is.
The numbers are not even similar in any way. The entire Kenya population is about
Probably
57
Lagos.
million. You understand? That's the population of our own youth demographic of 14 to 24 years old. So I mean, how do we compare it and say, this is what they did and so we're going to do it? No. The other thing people didn't know is that Kenya has seen this coming for a long time. I served in Nairobi several years back, and I have always said that they are sitting on a keg of gunpowder. There are only 2 cities. Whether you're in Nairobi or you're in Mombasa. If you're not in any of those 2 cities, you are not in Kenya. And that is not good for the population of the country. And the good thing about Kenya is that they're also in the top 10 in terms of education in the continent. So what it means is that they have young, educated people who knew their right from their left and who could ask questions. You understand? We don't have that in Nigeria. That's our own challenge. When the people who need to speak out are speaking out on the level of engagement and direct engagement, we are pushing out people that do not have anything working for them. They completely don't think that the country has been fair to them in any way, and they do not have any, positioning that they are going to take going forward. So, I mean, we have more than 70% of our population that cannot read and write, and a lot of the youth population are in that demographic. Right. So what are we going to do? We can't even engage with some of them.
We often expect a miracle when we read about 20 million out of school children yearly, maybe more these days.
Maybe more. Maybe more. I mean, depending on who you're talking to. You ask Ministry of Education, they tell you something else.
UNICEF has a different...
You ask anyone. I mean, everybody has their data.
The truth is that it is
there's a large number
of out of school
There's
children.
a large number out there, and we need to do something yesterday, not today.
Yesterday. Well, it's time to go for a short break. We'll return to continue this discussion. It's getting really interesting.
Thank you.
What indeed are the demands, and do we have time to start reeling out or meeting up these demands? Is it too late? We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's good to know you're right there. Now we have to talk about these demands that young people are asking for, according to some of the organizers, which is mostly on social media, and bad governance. That's what this protest that is supposed to start from the 1st of August to the 10th of August is tagged, and bad governance. Let's just talk about the removal of subsidy. That's one of the many demands. We'll get into others. But Dr. Adeniyi is still right here. Dr. Soji Adeniyi is still right here. What do you think this government that from day one had announced the removal of fuel subsidy, we had thought we would see action after that, like you mentioned, the CNG buses. We had thought there would be a better structured welfare, especially in transportation, but we're not seeing all of that.
Yeah.
But these people are asking for the removal of fuel subsidy. Do you think this government would back that?
I don't see that happening, having gone this far. And even if they remove the subsidy now, the risk that we face is that the normal thing in Nigeria, everything that has gone up may stay up, and we will go back into the deficit that we used to have before the first subsidy was removed. So I think we should not expect that the government would want to do this, but perhaps it's a good way to remind them of some of the promises that they made concerning the level at which they are supposed to provide alternatives and support the transition to what they call a decade of gas. And if we are to push them a little bit further, we would say that they have an opportunity of engaging more with young people in the energy transition. We could actually make good use of a lot of technical hands in all this value chain of the gas enterprise, including liquefied natural gas, compressed natural gas, whatever kind of gas that we want to push into the economy. We can actually use a lot of young people in this space, and all we need to do is to get the government to
have abundance of gas.
Not think about importation of the kits, but manufacturing of the kits. That is one way forward. The second way is that we need to convert our technical schools into these mechatronics villages, where people can take their cars there and they can get the conversion done at costs that are reasonable, and they can have financing also, like I said before.
But do we have the equipment to fabricate in country? To fabricate
it's not rocket science. The interesting thing is that this is where we go back to what we used to have with Nigeria Machine Tools, Nigeria, Ajaokuta steel rolling mills. All of these being in limbo is why we are where we are, to borrow the words of the former vice president. You understand? If we can go back to Nigerian Machine Tools, I am so sure that Nigerian Forgery, Nigeria Meteorological Agency, all these people coming together, they can actually get an easy, technological transfer. China produces this and sells on the internet like
as easy as that.
like baby. So even if we buy it and then we begin to teach ourselves through some of our training institutes, we have Firo there, we have the rest of them, they can easily clone some of these kits, and before you know it, we will also be a good producer.
Well, let's move on to the next demand. Scrap the 1999 Constitution and replace it with a people-made Constitution for the Federal Republic of Nigeria through a sovereign national conference followed by a national referendum. Okay. This, before I go further, all this is coming from the person championing this particular demand is Omoyele Sowore, who is the former candidate, presidential candidate of the AAC, that's the African Action Congress. So you can see that it falls into his ideology of a referendum, asking for all of that. But
we've gone through that channel before in the past, if you ask me, and I think we have several recommendations that are yet to even be
that's
considered.
The 2010 confab.
Exactly. So the confabs have been there. So if you want another confab, that's very easy for the government to organize. It's not the confab itself that is going to transform the nation, is the implementation. And if we know how government tends to implement, it's not a demand that you can make overnight and get
then start getting
and then you start getting the results. We're not in a military government, so it has to go through all the paths. But this is one that I think they may be able to compromise and just give it for argument's sake.
Yeah. Now there's another one. It's a toss the Senate, their words exactly, by the way, everyone, their words exactly. Toss the Senate arm of the Nigerian legislative system, keep the House of Representatives, and make lawmaking a part-time endeavor.
That's very interesting one. This is something that has been advocated over time, that we have a bloated system, that
legislative system.
Yeah, a bloated legislative system that we could do with at least half of it. If we have representation from the lower house, I mean, there's no need having the upper chamber. And of course, the upper chamber hasn't made it any easier for any one of us because of the way they have also gone about their business. They are the flamboyant group, and then they're the ones that will tell you they cannot use any vehicle less than an SUV. How do they go around doing? I mean, those kind of those statements actually
are very inciting.
They're not very supportive of a group that genuinely want to reposition Nigeria. So again, whether this is going to happen is the people you are asking to do this are the people who are also going to do some of the other things. So I would have thought that this would be something they will hold in their arsenal, wait for these same people to help do all the things that they want to do, and then over time begin to negotiate that as a way forward following the referendum or whatever it is that would have been the decision. But to put it together,
it might be tough. It gets even tougher. Now listen, they say they're paying Nigerian workers a minimum wage of nothing less than 250,000 naira monthly. Bear in mind that I even watched the labor union justify that 70,000 naira that was agreed a couple of days back. A couple of days back. He was talking about the consequential adjustments that will happen, and there's really nobody in step one. So the labor.
He analyzed it. He was the one that analyzed it, or for the Minister of Labor.
Labor analyze this. Labor is excited about 70,000 naira, and you know how long it took us to even get to this figure at last. However, they are asking for 250.
Well, again, this is another one that I think will not fly, because Labor negotiated this, went on strike, came back to the negotiating table, and then they came up with these midpoint, and they've agreed that it will be reviewed every 3 years. So I think they already have a good deal, and I don't think that
Labor itself thinks they have a good deal.
Yes, so I don't think I think the people who are pushing for 250 are probably not understanding the economics of where the states, who are the largest employers of labor. The federal government
is
not employing the numbers that are employed by the states, and the states have not been able to pay. Some have not been able to pay 30,000.
I mean,
and
it was
already
just
said
in
that
May, that
beyond them.
accepted.
You understand? So what will happen is that yes, they can't even say yes, and then they go on, mass
failure. And nothing would be done.
Nothing will be done. So we'll be back to square one. So this won't fly.
Now listen to another one. Invest heavily in education and give Nigerian students grants and not loans. Aggressively pursue free and compulsory education for children across Nigeria.
Okay, I'm an educationist.
I know.
This makes my day. I mean, it's a good demand in the rest in the space that we have. But no country gives grants just like that. There has to be a structure that can support that. We don't have an economy that can support grants. The loans are good. That's what even America and the rest of the world does, in terms of getting higher education. The problem that people don't understand is that higher education is where the problem is. What is universal basic education talks about pre-primary all the way to junior secondary, finishing. That's grade 9, like they said. Your choice after secondary school to go and become a doctor, a lawyer, whatever,
or get into technical
colleges are all
yours.
But what the government holds you is that universal basic education. Right. Because once you have the fundamentals, you can decide to do anything you want to do as a person. You are not any less because you are not a graduate. You are not any less because you don't hold a PhD. You are not any less but you are less when you don't have a skill, when you don't have basic knowledge. So if government can ensure that even at finishing of secondary school, you are already skilled for life, then we can be sure that we will get this through. So I think they should modify that to turn it to skilled education at the universal basic education level. I think it was part of the things that the Obasanjo government wanted to do with the 634.
Yeah.
So if we could ensure that is happening in the real sense, and then what is lacking in the technical schools is that those technical schools are so theoretical. So we need to have a mix where the private sector will engage with them, and the people who goes to technical colleges would actually be engaging with commercial, customers. So that way, when they go out and they start doing their own business, they are not just talking about the machine they saw in the lab. They're talking about the machine they used while they were in school. And then they can go to a bank and get the money to buy that same machine and start their business the day after college.
Right. Release Nnamdi Kanu unconditionally and demilitarize the Southeast. All NSAS and political detainees must also be released and compensated.
I don't know where that is coming from, because I don't think that...
I didn't think there were political detainees.
I don't know where that is coming from, so I'd rather not comment on that.
Okay, rationalize public-owned enterprises sold to government officials and cronies.
Aha, I love that one. And I think they should do that. And I don't think that it should stop at just rationalizing. I think they should investigate and bring to book those who have been found to do that. That's really nothing that anyone should go out protesting for. That should be something that the states would think is the right thing to do.
I mean, I had expected, some of us had expected more from this administration when it came to ensuring the right thing is done. Those who are culpable, even the NNPCL. Some of us thought with his coming, there would be names will be mentioned, and a lot of people would be probe. Reinstate a corrupt free subsidy regime. That's bringing back, we had spoken about that, to reduce hunger, starvation, and multi-dimensional poverty. Probe past and present Nigerian leaders who have looted the treasury, recover their loot, and deposit it in a special account to fund education, healthcare, and infrastructure.
Okay.
Do we have it in us to actually go for past leaders?
no one is supposed to be above the law.
But can we go after them?
And I don't see a reason why we cannot, because basically if we say no one is above the law, it means that we can actually get them into law courts to defend themselves. So we can assume that they actually have skeletons in their cupboards, and maybe at the law court they're able to prove themselves that they didn't have anything that they didn't hand. But that shouldn't stop us from pushing and asking them to defend themselves.
Dr. Adeniyi, after when you're done with your with this ideal situation, let's come back to the political terrain, the Nigerian political terrain.
Well, it's not just Nigeria. I mean, we saw what happened in the US, where
exactly.
the president was brought to book, and it didn't stop the president from going
running,
on.
exactly.
So he's still going on, and that's the father of democracy. If you ask me, as a nation, they are over 200 years in democracy, and if they are still ignoring that court rulings and everything,
elephant in the room.
I mean, who are we? We're just 60 years old.
Exactly. Okay, there's a demand here, the restructuring of Nigeria to accommodate Nigeria's diversity. I don't know what that means. Resources control, decentralization, and regional development. Restructuring Nigeria. That has become relatable. It depends on who you ask.
I think it depends on who you ask, like you rightly said. The Nigeria that we know today is made up of states, but we've also begun to look at geopolitical zoning, and even within the geopolitical zoning, you are now seeing that some are getting zonal development commission, while some
I mean, Doctor, I saw that.
So I don't know why we have Northwest coming up. Northeast is already there. South is there. Now I hear Southeast. So it's only Southwest and not Central.
No, there's the Northwest. So
not Central and Southwest.
Yes, exactly.
You understand? So before you know it, those are representatives.
I cannot begin to ask. You know how the NDDC came about, where there was the agitation that, I mean, you're taking oil from our zone and there is no developmental strategy for our people. That was the whole idea of it.
NDDC.
So when you hear of Southeast, I'm like, what is it supposed to serve? You already have governors. They have the security.
You're not even holding them accountable.
You're not holding them accountable. Now local government is enjoying autonomy of, well,
at least supposed to be enjoying
autonomy. And you're not holding.
So go back and contest even as local government chairman and councillors, and let's see whether you can make a difference in your local government. That's what I'll push the young people to do. This is the time that they need to think about it seriously. Again,
we are having a conversation around resource control. Resource control. What does it depict for you?
Resource control has always been what it is. Live by what you produce in your region and bring the extra to the center. That's not going to happen in Nigeria of today. I don't know about tomorrow, because we know why they're holding on to the things that they're holding on to. If there's a genuine restructuring and they want to go back to what we had before independence and in the early years of independence, where the Grand North and the oil South and the cocoa Southwest were, competing among themselves. It sounds idealistic at that time, but times have moved on.
But do we have governors who are even prioritizing internally generating funds with
IGR, internally generated revenue, has become a focus for a lot of the governors. The issue is that because they still come to Abuja every month
for allocation,
they collect and they go back. Of course, that's going to reduce now if the local government structure comes to play. But majority of them, and I've visited quite a bit of them to tell them what they can do in order to improve, the economy of their states. But you would hear them say, I was talking to one a couple of months back to say, develop your mineral structure, have an agreement with the federal government on what you want to do and all of that. And then they said, I don't want banditry. And I'm like, you don't want banditry. So you would not develop your mineral resources so that bandits will not come and take it over. Is that a good excuse for someone who's supposed to be running?
And chances are that bandits are already
there. You understand? So we have a lot of governors that probably need to, retweak again, and this kind of demand perhaps would push them to begin to think about what they need to do. There's no state in Nigeria that cannot be developed. They may not be self-sufficient as we speak, but they have huge potentials that they need to just simply reposition themselves, bring in private sector if they cannot do it, so long as security is guaranteed from the federal government. Security, security, security. We cannot overemphasize that. And that is why we may not be able to move at the speed that we ought to move. It's affecting food security, it's affecting economy of the state, it's affecting tourism, it's affecting almost every strata that would have transformed us as a country. So once we are able to address that, and we can't address it with boots on the ground, we have to use non-conventional means. We have to understand that children who are not educated are already
susceptible,
carrying harms in their heads.
Right.
There are no books in their head. The heads cannot be empty. They're carrying harms in their head. They're only waiting for the guy that hands it over to them. I always say that there are no out-of-school children. They're only in the wrong schools. There's schools of banditry, schools of kidnapping. The day we see them is the day they have graduated and they have their evidence in AK-47.
And that's a scary thought, considering the number that we're talking about.
And we're producing them on a daily basis. So we are not recruiting soldiers and police on a daily basis. But these people are graduating on a daily basis.
Exactly.
From where they have been.
So I'll just quickly run through some of the demands here. But again, this is coming from the Shore angle. It says here, they say they are demanding the restructuring. Okay, I have read that. End banditry, terrorism, and violent crimes. Reform security agencies to stop continuous human rights violation. Establishment of a special energy immediately to drive massive corruption-free power sector and development. Immediate restructuring of the electoral body. INEC to remove corrupt individuals and partisan hack appointed to manipulate elections. Massive investment in public works and industrialization will help employ Nigerian steaming youth. Massive shake-ups in the Nigerian judiciary to remove cabals of corrupt generations of judges and judicial officers that continue denying citizens access to real justice. Now, looking at all these demands, it doesn't seem it's actually what a citizen should ask for. Do you think they are lumping too much on the president right now, or the
well, he's the president, and they have every right to voice their,
But however, are they
but what they need to understand, what they need to understand is that if you are asking for 100 transformation, maybe 5 will go through. The remaining 95 may just be a waste of your time. So it would have been good if they had prioritized and come up with this 3-point, 4-point, 5-point agenda that would have the largest transformation, or that would shift the needle, in a way that would reach the larger population. I mean, I didn't see the linkage even to young people come out strong in all of this demand. It's like a general demand for good governance, basically. Yeah, so I think they need to sit back, and that's where the problem of not having an organized structure is.
And it's beginning to really look like an AAC ideology from
and that's what he's been campaigning against. That's what his manifesto has been, and the rest of them. So are we forcing his manifesto on Nigerians? We're not all AAC members. So the people who are going on the street, AAC members in disguise, what's going on?
Right. Well, we really have run out of time, but it's been a wonderful conversation, Dr. Soji Adeniyi. It's always wonderful to talk about these issues that affect all of us, but this is where we round it up on Joy Asoye Live. Do keep a date with us tomorrow, as we'll be back with so much more. Have a wonderful and restful evening.
Thank you.